Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the Lone Star Podcast. I am ultra stoked today to have Mr. Ben Siegel with me. How you doing, Ben?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing very good, man. Real happy to be here. Thank you for doing this.
Yes, sir.
So Ben is the owner, proprietor, manager, kind of all things hands on deck, right, with Banger's Sausage House and Beer Garden in Austin, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
This is a pretty sweet spot.
Getting sweeter.
Yeah. I see you got a lot of construction going on the other side of the building, right?
We do.
A big expansion going?
Yeah, man. It's a pretty large, multifaceted expansion. It's we were really lucky in that we were able to purchase the land right adjacent to us in about 2014, and spent about 3 years planning and broke ground in 2017, and hopefully we'll be done someday.
Someday, right? Isn't that how all construction goes?
Man, it's
especially this magnitude. You're downtown Austin. I'm sure all of the permitting and contractors and greasing the politicians, if you will, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's trying to develop something I think in general has inherent challenges with it, but trying to do it here in Austin, Texas, with as competitive as this market is from a development perspective, just adds a whole nother layer to it. And
yeah,
so
absolutely.
We're definitely feeling that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I first heard about you guys, let's see, I believe it was the PBS episode of Franklin's.
Yep.
When he was making sausage, and he came down to you guys, he goes, nobody's making sausage as good as these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so I watched that episode, and I was like, man, that's a pretty cool spot. And I've followed you on Instagram and all your social media stuff, which, by the way, is fantastic.
Thank you.
One of the best follows I have. I got to ask you about your golfer buddy here in a minute. But the production, y'all's videos and everything, it's excellent, man.
Thank you.
So anyways, I've been following y'all ever since, and when I decided I wanted to do this podcast, you were one of the first ideas that popped up. I was like, I want to get folks like this that are doing cool shit, that are, not a chain, right? I mean, this is just you, and this is your baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's exactly what I'm going for. And contacted you, and you said, well, yeah, man, I'd love to do a podcast, but come out to the restaurant first. And I said, yeah, sure thing. I know it's on the list. So I came up during ATX, Austin. What's it called? South by Southwest.
Yep.
Sorry. And came down, had a great time. Food's excellent. The whole atmosphere is awesome. What do you call this little row right here? Do you have a name for it?
Yes, I mean, so where we are right now, we're kind of smack dab in the middle of the Rainey Street historic district.
Okay.
And it's one of the funkiest streets in the state, probably in the country. I mean, basically, it's kind of a real quick snapshot on what's going on, since this is radio. It's not you can't see it, but so Rainey Street's one of the oldest streets in Austin. It's one of the original subdivisions that existed, and for over 100 years, it was basically a small, sleepy, quiet residential neighborhood. And in about 2004, 2005, they changed the zoning from single-family residential, which is what it was for about 100 years, to central business district, which is the most lax, wide-reaching zoning that there is. And the intention for that change was really, we're right adjacent to downtown, and they really wanted to expand downtown and have a bunch of big buildings get built. And the problem is that change kind of corresponded with the crash in 2007, 2008 of the economy.
Okay.
And one of the unintended consequences of that was that when they changed the zoning, restaurants and bars were permitted use. And restaurants and bars are also counter-cyclical. So when the rest of the economy is going down, people are still drinking.
Yes.
And so basically they sort of figured out, just kind of by, happenstance, that all you needed to do was go down, fill out a couple forms at the city, and you can open up a bar and a house. And so basically what ended up happening is this whole bar district where the restaurants and bars are all in old homes. And it's really cool, real funky, and it's very Austin.
It's exactly, very unique, man. It's a pretty cool spot. The first time I drove down here, I'm like, well, look at what these guys going on here.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you don't see in a lot of other places. I don't know about the rest of the country. You definitely don't see it many places in the state. And the only one I can think of, and maybe something similar, is Kemah, Texas. down by where I'm at. There's so they have the big Kima boardwalk. That's a bunch of restaurants, all that stuff, and then right adjacent to it are a bunch of old homes, like you said, that bars and restaurants stuff. So I wonder if that's something similar.
Could be, yeah. I mean, again, like I said, I've definitely seen plenty of restaurants and bars operated out of houses, but it's the idea that like a whole
street,
block, it just like almost left unchanged, and they just turned them into restaurants and bars. And you've got, you're starting to see the developers come in now, and a lot of these big buildings get built. But in my opinion, it's just even more funky because you've got 2 houses, you got a 36-story building, and then 4 or 5 houses following that. And it's just like, man, it's bizarre.
That's awesome.
It's bizarre.
Man. That's awesome. So, how do you describe your food? Because I've been telling folks I'm coming to Banger Sausage House, and I'm going to do a podcast and this and that, and they're like, well, what do they make? I'm like, gourmet hot dogs of sorts, right? I mean, how do you explain it?
So, it's funny. We've been fortunate with a lot of success, and I think one of the things that I contribute to that success is not falling into a pitfall that a lot of restaurants and restaurateurs fall into, and that is we are what we are. We are what we say we are. It's about being straightforward, and so our name is Banger's Sausage House and Beer Garden, and you come here and it's a sausage house and beer garden, right? And because what happens in hospitality is there's lots of good ideas, there's lots of cool stuff, but a good idea plus a good idea in hospitality is often not a good idea. It can often be confusing, and so customers don't want to be confused. They want to understand what it is that you're doing. If they have a good time, then what they want is consistency. They want to be able to come back, and they like that bratwurst. They want that bratwurst to taste the same way as it did the last time. They're not interested in you making a change or whatever else. You can run specials, but the bratwurst needs to taste like the bratwurst that they had the last time. And so, my answer to those people is, man, it's a sausage house. We make sausage.
There it is.
If you look at our menu, that's what it is.
You do a damn good job of it too,
Thank
man.
you.
Damn good
That.
So you also have, to go along with that, I see pig roasts. We have cookouts. I mean, you're doing other stuff than just sausage, right?
So we're ever since we opened up, so we're gonna celebrate our 6-year anniversary. We always celebrate our anniversary on the first Saturday in August, but it really, I believe, our anniversary is July 31st. Not that important.
Yeah.
I'd say since the first or second month that we were open, we cooked our first whole pig. And from there, we were committed to and have followed through on doing, cooking something with a face once a month. And we call it Smokeout Saturdays. And it's just a big party we throw in the backyard, whole animal roast, live music, and it's just a good time. And so, that's really picked up steam. We those things are always really well attended, always real successful. And again, we've cooked all kinds of different animals, throughout the years, but I've always kind of come back to the pig. And so, in conjunction with this expansion that we have going on right now, there's kind of 2 things that we're building. There's a really large building, kind of a 2-story building with a basement at 81.5 Rainey Street, which is right next door. And then at the back of our beer garden at 81 Rainey Street, we're building this pretty large, multifaceted smokehouse.
Okay.
And so that smokehouse will operate 3 days a week doing production smoking for bangers, so think about like bacon, sausage, stuff like that. And then 4 days a week, it'll operate as its own standalone concept. And what that concept will be, as far as we know, the first ever in the history of Texas whole hog barbecue restaurant. And so lots of guys have cooked pigs in the state of Texas, but it's for the most part been as specials and one-offs and things like that. As far as we've been able to find and tell, there's no one that's had whole hog barbecue as a standing menu item ever. And so that's what's up.
That is what's up. So that was going to be my point, is whole hog is not necessarily a Texas tradition, right? You're talking Georgia, you're talking the Carolinas.
Yep.
That's kind of, East United States barbecue. So doing whole hog is definitely unique to this region for sure. Yep. And I got to agree, I don't know of anyone that's doing whole hog anywhere in the state. So I've seen whole cow.
Yep.
That's pretty unique.
And there's lots of guys that have cooked, but like again, I'm not claiming we're the only ones to ever cook a pig.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is just on a daily consistency as a standing menu item, not a special, but the focus of our restaurant.
That's pretty exciting.
It really is.
Yeah.
And so we a lot of that is born out of to sort of playing the hand you're dealt. And so our pit master is a guy named Ted Prater, and he again is an original employee hire of ours, so he's been with us as long as we've been open. He came on sort of to head our prep kitchen, and kind of 2 months after we opened up, became the executive chef at Bangers, and was that up until I believe last year when we brought in a new executive chef to allow him to kind of focus on the expansion. And he's from Tennessee, and so for a long time, what we were doing was cooking pigs in an Eastern Tennessee fashion, and so that's essentially using a cinder block smoker with an offset heat, real low, real slow, real long. And so that's a 24 to 26 hour cook, produces an unbelievable product. The problem with it is you're cooking it so long and so low. Yeah. Well, it's a long time. So operationally, there's some challenges there. But it's a long time. I mean, again, a brisket's going to take you 12 to 18 hours as well, depending on how you want to do it. The problem with it is, the skin turns to leather. And it's basically, aside from being a dog chew toy, is completely unusable. And that's 10% of the weight of the animal. And also, if you treat the skin properly, it's the best part. That crunchy, delicious, sort of chicharron, exactly. Cracklings, all that. And so, we did a road trip, I think in the fourth quarter of last year, 2017, and flew into Asheville, North Carolina, and then basically worked our way down to Charleston, South Carolina. And we did whole hog barbecue spots all along the way. And what we ended up settling on was sort of an Eastern North Carolina style of cooking a pig, which again is in a pit, but rather than having offset heat kind of outside of the smoker, you're basically putting a ring of fire around that pig, shoveling coals around the pig. So it's somewhat offset, but it's a little hotter, a little faster, and a little bit more direct.
Okay.
And so you'll cook that pig kind of belly side down for, let's just say, the better part of 12 to 16 hour cook, kind of depending upon the conditions and what's happening. And then in that last hour, you come in and you flip that pig over onto its back. You take those coals, you drag it underneath the pig, crisp that skin up, pull it up, and then chop it up for sandwiches or pull it for plates.
Awesome.
So you get more utilization, it cooks faster, and quite frankly, it's a better product. And so we're doing a slightly modified version of that style of cook.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
It's really exciting.
I have goosebumps over here. I love it.
And actually, and as a matter of fact, we're so we've got a really good relationship with a pig farmer out of Fayetteville, Texas, Yonder Way Farm. So they've been supplying our whole pigs, not ever since we've been cooking them for I think the last 3 years or so. And so ultimately, when we kind of really get rolling, we've been talking with him, and we're going to be developing our own pig herd that he's going to have for us. The problem we have with that is the volume that we're planning on doing would basically double his production in the course of a year. And so for a small-time farmer, A, that's a big ask. And number two, we don't really know what's going to happen, right? I mean, like, we think it's going to be successful. We hope it's going to be successful. But, when you're talking about raising animals for a specific purpose, if all of a sudden business slows down, those animals are there. They got to be slaughtered. They got to go somewhere. And so what we're going to do is we found another pig supplier that's, ethically raised and everything else out of Iowa. And we're going to start out with their pigs and then work into our production with Jason, the farmer over at Yonder Way. And so yesterday we actually got our first sample pig from that supplier. We took half of it and we're curing it and kind of messing it with it in other ways. Put the other half on the smoker last night. And so at some point when we're done with this podcast, we'll be able to try some whole hog barbecue and see how that pig turned out.
That just sounds terrible. I'm not going to lie.
Some of the perks of the job, I guess.
So, man, that's really exciting stuff. Really is. My dad is currently in Alabama right now doing a pork and chicken cook-off with his brothers or whatever. He dragged the pit down there. So we're barbecue guys. It's Texas, right?
Yep.
So we've always enjoyed it. And the last week was Galveston County Fair and cook-off rodeo, all that stuff. And so big in the cook-off barbecue world, man. And that's exciting. I like that you're doing the whole hog. That's something different, like you said. That's not everybody's doing every day, or no one's doing every day, right? So that's pretty cool stuff. Do y'all do anything else besides the cook-off or the cookout? I mean, is there any other monthly events like that goes on?
Like from a food perspective, or just generally speaking?
Generally.
Yeah, I mean, we do. So we've ever since we opened up, we've had a dog park on site. Other than the last couple of months, so the dog park used to be where the smokehouse is currently being built. Once 81.5, the new property opens up, we've got another place that's sectioned off for dogs, and so we've always been really focused on dogs. All of our charity work that we do is directed towards dogs. And so we do a monthly dog happy hour called Mega Monday. That's a big thing that we do. We got Country Thunder Thursday, which is a big music event that we do once a week, live music. Our Sunday brunch is always, again, another big event. We roll out a separate menu just on Sundays, have a 15-piece brass band that comes in and rocks out, does pop music covers, and that's, again, just a monster onto itself. And so, yeah, man, I mean, we like to have a good time. We're blessed with a really big, unique venue, and so we're always looking to see how we can utilize that and throw a good party for our customers.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of the feel that y'all have. I don't know if this is what you try to do, but it feels like you're at the backyard hanging out.
Yep.
Right. So the cookouts, the live music, all that stuff. You feel like you're at a buddy's house hanging out, which is really cool. Beautiful spot, man. Like I said. So how'd you get started in this whole gig and this whole game? How did Bangers come about?
Yeah, man. I mean, so my what's interesting about my story is, like, I my first job in the restaurant business was as the owner of a restaurant. So I didn't wait tables through college and start on the dish pit and work my way up. And I think that's sort of bittersweet. I think in some ways it's great because it allows me to approach things with sort of clear eyes. And in other ways, it's frustrating because I made a few mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But kind of the short version of a long story is I came to UT for college. I went out a lot, and there was a sausage cart on 6th Street called the Best Worst Sausage Cart, and I loved it. And so 2:00 in the morning, the bars were closed, and I was in that line, and I can remember it was my freshman or sophomore year of college. I can sort of vividly remember having the thought about, like, man, like, the line here is so much longer than any of these other places. Why isn't there like a restaurant? Why is everyone going to this sausage cart for this? Like, why isn't there a sausage focused restaurant that's doing this? And that moment, that thought was really the seed for Bangers. And so I carried that with me kind of all through college. I went down a very traditional path. I was a commercial real estate broker. Kind of knew almost immediately that was not what I wanted to do with my life. And like so many young people, you ask yourself the question of, like, what's my purpose? What is it that I'm meant to do? What is it that I want to do? And you are asking yourself that question. It seems like it should be a pretty simple question to answer because you're you and you should know the answer. But man, is that a tough one.
Yes.
And so I would ask myself that question. This thought of this sausage house would kind of enter my mind, and then I would immediately dismiss it, right? Because again, you hear all these horror stories about restaurants, most difficult job, the highest failure rate, all this stuff, and I had no experience, and so I would dismiss it as kind of a dumb idea, and that cycle continued for many years. And basically, what happened was I was on an airplane coming home from a buddy's wedding. Buddy got married in Washington D.C. I was flying back to Austin, and I kind of got hit. Excuse me, I was flying back to Los Angeles at the time. I went from Austin to Dallas. I was living in L.A. And working as a commercial real estate broker, and I kind of had these three thoughts hit me kind of all at once. And so the first thought was I kind of going through life with the assumption that life was just going to work out, right? That I was going to be happy and I was going to be rich and I was going to be successful and it was just going to happen. And all of a sudden I just realized that that's just not the way it works. Like if you want those things, then you have to go do those things. You have to go get those things. You need to take control of your life. And for whatever reason, I did not see that clearly before, and I saw it clear as day all of a sudden, right? The next realization I had, at the time I was 27 years old. I was a young man. I was unmarried, no kids. I didn't own a house. I was in a job I didn't like. there was nothing holding me back. There was nothing tying me down. I could go anywhere I wanted and be anything that I wanted to be. And the only thing that was stopping me was myself and my own limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I saw that real clearly. And then the third thought was, man, I know what I want to do. I want to move back to Austin, Texas, because I don't know why I ever left. It's my favorite place in the world. And I want to open up a sausage house and beer garden. And literally the plane landed. I text messaged my boss. I said, hey, man, I want to meet tomorrow. We got to have breakfast. I basically need to put my notice in. And tell him that on text. And he's like, man, I got something else going on, this and that. And I said, well, this can't wait. Can you talk right now? And I literally called him on the airplane and just said, man, I'm putting in you tell me how much time you need. I'm putting in my notice. That was December 2010. And I then from there, I had a really good buddy, this guy named Sean Chaney, that was in the process of opening up his second restaurant. So that's December 2010. That restaurant opened in February of 2011. And so I spent about 2-3 months with Sean, kind of shadowing him in the opening of the restaurant.
Learning the process
And kind of making sure that it's what I wanted to do. And then once the restaurant opened, I basically kind of bounced around and did everything from kind of shadowing him as the owner to working in the kitchen to managing to working in the front of the house. And so I'd spend 3-4 days a week with Sean at the restaurant. And then I'd spend 3-4 days a week at home writing my business plan and kind of figure out what I wanted to do. Simultaneously, one of my best buddies from college, this guy named Adam Glick, went back to school to get his MBA at UT. And so I would fly into town, for 7 to 10 days at a time. We'd kind of make a list of, all right, well, you want to start a restaurant, what do you need to do? You got to hire a lawyer, you got to hire a graphic designer. And my background was sales, so I knew how to cold call. So I'd start cold calling, and I'd set meetings for us. And so in between classes, I'd fly in town, I'd stay with Adam, I'd stay on an air mattress on his floor. We'd then go to meetings with lawyers and whoever else we needed to meet with to try and say, hey, we're opening up a restaurant. And what was amazing about that time is how kind people were. It's in retrospect, it's a pretty dumb thing to say, right? A pretty cliche thing to, hey, I want to open up a restaurant. I mean, I can even tell you now, sitting in the seat that I sit in today, I got people coming in and having that conversation with me all the time, and I'm just like, no, you're not. And by the way, they don't. I never say that. I'm always very kind.
Yeah.
But people took us seriously, and they gave us a lot of encouragement, and so we started putting the deal together, and so we'd fly back and forth, and basically that went on until June of 2011, at which point I moved out to Austin. We found these 2 lots on Rainey Street, and we had put them under. We had a letter of intent out, and ultimately put them under contract. And then in July of 2012 is when we opened up our doors for the first time. Wow. So that's the quick version of a long story.
Well, that's an awesome inspirational story, man. That's kind of, so I think I'm in a little bit of that same transition right now, that you're speaking of, which is why I started this podcast. Wanted to do something different. I've on the same thing on the career path. I'm 28 years old, and I've kind of framed it as like intellectual renaissance of some sort, right? Of the last 3 or 4 years, I'm like, well, I've got a job, I make good money, but is this really what I want to do, right? So that whole story you just told or whatever kind of hits home right now with me. So that's really cool, man.
Yeah, and good for you, man, for following a passion, because life's too short.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's just too many people out there that settle. And there's just no need to settle.
Exactly.
Take some risks and go live your life.
Yeah, and speaking of folks being kind, it's the same thing with this podcast, man. I can't believe how encouraging people have been, and you saying yes, and yeah, man, come on down to be awesome. Like, just all that, I'm just like, wow, badass. Yeah, man, I'll be there. So that's it's real cool. So maybe the most important question I'm gonna ask you throughout this whole thing is,
sure you want to hit me with it now?
Yeah, I am. Is when are you opening one up in Houston?
Here's what's interesting, right? I think that there's 2 general ways that you can grow, right? You can grow out or you can grow in, right? And if I look at the model that we've built here at Bangers, we have the opportunity to grow out, right? I mean, again, we're at the end of the day, you could lay a bunch of accolades and say a bunch of stuff. We're selling sausage and beer, right? Yeah. It's not that complicated. Part of the reason why we're successful is basically everyone drinks beer and everybody eats sausage. And every nation and every culture in the world has brewed some form of beer and made some kind of forced meat, right? Yeah. So there's a from a culinary perspective, it's an international language that we're speaking, right? Like it's everyone understands. And so the concept that we could open up one of these in every major city or one in every state, like we absolutely could do that. And I could have a huge company and I could be super rich and success. Like, and I think I'm smart enough to do that. I think I could build the infrastructure to do that. Absolutely. But like, what for? You know, well, what I'd rather do is grow inward, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what we've got here is already pretty big, and it's hard to be great, right? And we're not great. I think we're doing a really good job, but I think we've got a long way to go before what we've created here is great. And there's so much more that we can do. And so what I would rather do, at least for the foreseeable future, is focus all of our energy and time of our people inward and get really granular with all the things we're doing and say, is this the best that it can be? Is there a better way? And then try to find that way and implement it for our guests and our customers.
Yeah, that's an awesome outlook, man.
So probably not going to Houston.
I know. I'm being a little selfish. So where did you grow up here? Did you grow up in Texas?
I didn't. So I've been here now 17 years.
Okay.
And so I feel I'm fully assimilated and this is my home.
Yeah.
But I'm originally from California. So
Okay.
came out here for college. And like I said, bounced around from Austin to Dallas for a little bit but yeah, I'm originally from California.
10-4. I'm looking around the office here and I'm
A lot of tchotchkes.
I'm digging what we got going. We got a what is that, 50 style refrigerator.
Yeah.
We got some spent ammo over there. Like I walked in, I'm like, yeah, me and this guy are gonna get along. Come and take it, flag. I love it, man. So what else are you into? What are your hobbies outside of the restaurant?
Man, so about a little over 2 years ago, I had my first child. About 18 months after that, I had my second child. About a year after my first son was born, I got married.
Okay.
It's sort of a crazy story. My wife and I went to high school together.
Okay.
Actually didn't date in high school, but it was actually a big part of the Banger story. Kind of goes back to her because it was, I kind of laid the timeline out, and I moved out in June of 2011. November of 2011, I went back for my 10-year high school reunion, and she and I kind of rekindled. And so we opened up in July 2012. She moved out here in June of 2012, and so has really been a part of the Banger story. We dated for 5 years. We ended up getting I proposed to her in March of 2015. We, unbeknownst to us, conceived a child that night. Started planning a wedding for November of 2015, and decided to push it a year. She didn't want to be 9 months pregnant at her wedding. Yeah. And then a week before the wedding, we got pregnant. We got pregnant again. So again, we didn't know until after, but the whole family was at the wedding. So quite frankly, my time is pretty focused right now on work and family.
Yeah.
It's there's a. Again, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the restaurant industry, and I'm really fortunate in that the restaurant I choose to open is as large as it is, because what that allows us to do is have a big staff. So right now we employ 102 people.
Wow.
And so it's a full management team. I mean, again, you'd said before, owner, manager. It's my actually the golf guy that you were talking about.
Okay.
That's Brian. Brian's our general manager, and he's the real deal, man. I mean, he's unbelievable. We've got, an executive chef in Larkin that's looking over Bangers. Ted, who was the guy that was poking his head in the window over here, wanting me to try a piece of meat. He's our pit master, and so we've got this whole management infrastructure. And what that allows me to do is be a dad, and be a husband, and as well as a business owner and a businessman, and take care of my employees and my family, and that's about all the time I have is kind of those two things.
Yeah.
And maybe play a little poker if I can find the time.
There you go. Yeah. Poker gets you in trouble now. Yeah, we were talking before. You're over here sitting, kicking back, shuffling chips. I was like, that's a man that spent a few hours at the poker table.
Yeah, I have. It's but it has been a little while. But there's a lot of hours logged there.
Yeah.
But I've kept my chip shuffling game on point.
What years were you in at UT? Like what?
So I was a freshman in 2001, and I graduated in 2005.
So were you playing poker then?
Oh yeah, I started playing poker in college.
That was right around the Chris Moneymaker phase, man. It blew up.
That's exactly. Yeah. So I want to say I was a sophomore or a junior in college when that happened, and that just like, again, I feel like most guys play. Not most guys. A lot of guys will play cards, fraternity brothers, whatever else. I mean, that's kind of a time to start. And so we definitely did. And so towards the end, we were playing a lot, and then. When I was a commercial real estate broker, a lot of that was during the kind of the downtime when things went bust. And so there was a time when I was making more money on cards than I was, in my real estate career. Not that I was making much money either. Anyway, you sliced it, but it was still more.
Yeah, that's a tough hustle, man. Golly, that's a tough hustle.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of fun, man. But poker's that's a clear your head kind of game. You can't be thinking about much else besides when you sit down and stare at them cards.
Get in the zone.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So the craft beer that you have here, or the beer on tap. So I've seen a sign out front that said 106 beers on tap.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
So obviously that's a good pairing. Sausage beer
Sausage
just kind of goes together.
Yeah.
But so how do y'all decide kind of what's in, what's out, what's new, what's good, what's not? I mean,
it's a good question. It's funny, right? Like, you and this goes back to kind of one of the first things we talked about today, which was, I really had no experience doing this, right? And so one of the benefits of that is I was able to do some audacious things without thinking them through. And so once it was implemented, then all of a sudden you got to figure it out. And I think the 101 taps, there's a reason there's not a lot of guys with 101 taps out there, because it's a mother to manage, right? I mean, and like, how do you curate it? Who drinks it? How does that work? And, and quite frankly, we screwed that up for a while until we stopped and we figured it out. And so essentially what we have now is we've got a committee called the committee. It's a 7-member group made up of all staff members. There's certain requirements to be on the committee. Basically, you got to work here for 3 months. You got to be in good standing with the company, stuff like that. It's self-elected by the committee members. You can apply on a quarterly basis, and you're either voted in or voted out. And the committee they meet every Monday. They have a 2-hour meeting. The first hour of that meeting is a closed meeting for official committee business, and then the second hour is open to all staff members and also to suppliers and distributors, stuff like that. So our goal is to be the best beer bar in the world. Right, and so when you start thinking about, well, how do you do that, right? So there's kind of 4 main tenets that the committee focuses on in order to help us achieve that goal, right? So number 1 is the curation of the tap wall, okay? So there's a whole process that they could go through, and again, to the extent that you want to get in the weeds on this, I'm happy to, but basically they vote on the beers, and you've got our kind of beverage director is the guy that ultimately orders the beer. And what these guys are doing is voting on a list of beers that are approved that then he can go to the market and try to order. Because a lot of these things are rare, and you can either get them or you can't.
Yeah.
So the next thing is brewery relations, okay? And so each one of those committee members is assigned a handful of breweries that we really want to focus on, and they're in charge of making a relationship, right? I mean, the understanding that a lot of these beer allocations are going to be small. And there's 2 things that are going to drive who gets the best beer. Well, number 1 is they're in business, right? So it's sales, and the restaurant's going to handle that. And the other one, it's human beings selling beer to human beings. And so you want to do business with people you want to do business with. And so the goal is to try to create deliberate and good relationships with the community. And so the committee kind of spearheads that effort for us. The third thing is education of the staff, education of our customer. And so we've got a whole educational system, training system that we've developed kind of through the committee, like our formal training that you get when you get hired as a server, and then ancillary training that happens once you're here for a while. So it's something we call Beer College. And so we've got a Minister of Education that kind of oversees that, writes those materials, updates those materials, that kind of stuff. And then the fourth thing is tap wall maintenance. And that was actually the last. It used to be just 3, and then we added that 4th because you just realize how important it is. That, one thing I never realized about the beer business until I got in it was how vital that part of it was and how often it's overlooked, right? The best beer in the world that's put through a shitty line that's poorly maintained is going to taste like shit. Doesn't matter how good it is. And most people don't care and don't focus on it, and maybe they'll let their distributors clean the line from time to time. But we've got what we call our cellar master. He's our head bartender, but he works 2 work days, and he does 2 things. He takes and receives beer orders and makes sure that the cellar and our beer cooler is well organized and everything else, and he cleans tap lines. And so that's what's up. The committee.
The committee, I like it. It seems pretty unique. Your whole structure that you just kind of tapped on there doesn't seem like a lot of places kind of.
I've never heard of anybody else doing that. I mean, again, typically you'll have like a bar manager that inevitably does all of those things to some extent or another. But again, it goes back to our conversation about focusing inward or outward, right? And to the extent that you can, tether people's focuses together on one thing, you just the brighter the light that you shine on it, a lot of times the better results you get.
Yeah, exactly. And I imagine gives a lot of incentive to the employees.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, I think one of the challenges when you're running a business, when you're in a restaurant business, right, is that there's sort of a feeling out there that this is a job, it's not a career, right? That and when you're looking to really build a culture and have a wonderful company, you need to have career-minded people within your organization.
Yes.
And so, the things like the committee are one of the things that we do to help change that narrative, right? Because you're giving people other things that they can do, other knowledge bases that they can build, and different ways to get involved and influence the organization, and again, and a lot of that is just giving people a voice, making sure that people are heard and that their voice matters and has the potential to make an impact and a big difference.
Yeah. As soon as you were talking about elected committee, first hour's closed, second hour's open, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, that sounds pretty, like if I was a guy trying to figure out how to run a restaurant, I'd want to come work here and kind of be involved in all that. You know what I mean? And that seems pretty, like I said, it's an incentive for these young people trying to learn.
And that's exactly right, man. And we're also an open book company, right? And so all our financials are open for all of our staff to see. And on top of that, we make efforts to teach them kind of what's going on and walk them through that. All recipes, we share all our recipes with anybody that wants to see them and know about them and talk about it. I think you may have just screwed up there. What's that now?
I got a pen and paper in the car.
That's a good thing, man. Listen, you want to open a restaurant, go ahead. But one better, man. We'll print them off for you.
Yeah, I just want to make deer sausage. That's it.
We can do that. And again, and I guess where I was going with that is, that there's, to the extent that we can be a resource and a jumping off point for someone living out their dreams and living their best life, we want to do that, right? Like you come work for me and you look me in the eye and say, I want to open up a restaurant, and you're serious, I say, great. Let me tell you everything that I know from my position about opening up a restaurant. Let's get you set up with the general manager to spend time so you can understand the operations. Let's get you set up with the executive chef, and we'll out of our own time let you focus and learn as much as you can so you can go do your thing, man. It's just there's as long as we take care of ourselves, right? As long as we continue to run a good organization, we manage ourselves and everything else, we're going to be just fine. And so another sausage house can open up across the street if they want to. I mean, I hope it doesn't, but it doesn't threaten me. I think we'll be just fine.
That's pretty special, man. That's pretty special. I think we need more of that, first of all. And unique again. It's all unique. You don't hear of stuff like that too often. So, congratulations, man. That's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So, speaking of deer sausage, I've been screwing it up for years. I made a couple good batches, but yeah, that's the funny thing about sausage. Like you said, it's you think of it as the easy thing to make when you're so deer hunting, right? I butcher my deer, I go out, I process all my own meat. I've been doing that the last 5 or 6 years, something like that. And sausage is always, you grind it up, season it, you put it in a casing, smoke it. It seems to be like the easy part, but it's not. Like you screw it up so fast, it's not even funny. It makes you mad every time because it comes out looking beautiful and this and that, and you bite into it, it's over salted, or it crumbles. Yeah, there's some problems. So, if you could, what are some pointers, some basic things that we can tell people that are maybe listening in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is an understanding that it's got to be cold, right? The temperature in which you do it makes a big difference, right? And so if you let that sausage, ideally you're piping sausage between, I think it's 32 to 34, maybe 36 degrees is the temperature you want that meat when you're kind of grinding it and everything else. If it gets up above that temperature, much above that temperature, what's going to happen is your sausage is going to start smearing, right? Like the fat is going to start breaking down. It's going to start melting, and then you're going to get your crumbly sausage and stuff like that. And so from what we see, like that's usually, first of all, that's probably the biggest mistake that we make. You know what I mean? Our sausage makers in-house, if they're getting lazy or something else and we get a bad batch of sausage, they went too fast or didn't go fast enough.
Yeah.
They saw that the sausage got, because again, it's still from a food safety perspective, you're still well out of any kind of danger zone. At 38 degrees.
Yeah.
But you're just no longer an optimal sausage
quality.
Making. Exactly. Yeah. And so the short answer is cold meat, cold fat.
10-4. Yeah, it makes sense. I learned that after watching your episode with Franklin, right, is that he put all his grinder
in
the freezer.
Yep.
And I was like, huh. Mm-hmm. But I thought, after watching that, he may have explained it, and I just don't remember. I thought it was so it didn't stick. But I guess that's not the case. It's just to keep the meat cold. Mm-hmm. There you go. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. Pretty cool, man.
Yeah, because that grinder's going to throw heat off itself, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a machine that's going. Mm-hmm. So to the extent you can get that as cold as you can, it's going to stay cold, and then your meat's cold. But if all of a sudden it's warm and it'll all heat up.
Yeah,
which makes sense.
So what all kinds of meat do y'all use here? I know y'all got some exotic stuff, but hit some of the highlights.
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day, pork is the thing that we do more of than anything else. We've got a antelope and venison sausage on the menu. We've got a wild boar sausage on the menu. We've got a duck sausage on the menu.
Hold the jokes.
We do, exactly. We do, and we've chicken sausage on the menu. So those are the meats that we mess with, and your issues there are kind of a couple fold. One is availability. It's just hard to find those exotic meats outside of the ones that so we got a clear line on all of those things. The other issue is just price, right? Yeah. One of the things that we're really proud of here is, we're a made from scratch kitchen. So everything down to our, from our grain mustard to our French fries to our salmon that we put on our bagels, or we're curing, making in house. I think it's about 95% in house. But it's all at a reasonable price. You know what I mean? Our average ticket here is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20.
Yeah.
Whether that's 18 or 22, and come in here, get your sausage, get your side, get you a couple of beers. You're nice and full, and you're not going broke.
Yeah.
And that's really important to us.
So the antelope and venison, I'm curious. I've always been curious about this. So, are there farms around here that raise these animals in Texas?
Yeah. So there are. So there's. I think it's Broken Arrow Ranch. I believe is an exotics ranch, and I think that's where you can get wild boar and also the antelope and the venison. Mm-hmm. And essentially the way that works is they're USDA inspected. It's kind of crazy actually. So you'll have basically a kill. You'll have a hunter and you'll have an inspector that are next to each other. They'll kill an animal, and then they'll have a processing vehicle there. Mm-hmm. And so then they'll drive that vehicle over to the downed animal, and they'll process it and do their own thing in front of the inspector, which is how it's kind of USDA inspected, but still kind of a wild animal and everything.
Yeah.
So
I know there's the reason why I asked, I know there's funny laws on wild game consumption in restaurants and this and that, and some of the other places that I've looked at, done a little research on, or whatever the case is, they get a lot of their stuff from New Zealand. And so I was just curious as to, whatever ranch, but so that would make sense as to why it's more expensive, right? If they're tracking out a butchering vehicle on site, the inspector, all that stuff. But that's something I recently got interested in, is on the butchering and all that stuff.
Yeah, and and we don't, as a company, we don't have a commitment to a certain sourcing meat from a certain number of miles away or anything like that.
Yeah.
So we're, while we think there's a big benefit to that, we talked about Yonderway Farms and the relationship that we have there, and I think that when it makes sense, we want to do that. But our focus is more on kind of quality and affordability for our customer.
So the pork that goes into the sausage, that's not coming from Yonderway. That's someone else.
No, so it's the whole animals are what we're buying from him, whether it's lamb or anything else. Okay. And the pork that goes into the sausage is box meat. That it's good quality stuff, but we're not doing whole animal utilization at this point, where we're breaking down a pig, and this goes to sausage, and this goes to steaks, and this goes to that. Gotcha.
Y'all do any barbacoa?
Not on a regular basis, but
I'm just asking.
When we get that smokehouse open, we can mess with the kind of barbecues that we do. Get a little bit more South American with it.
There you go. Yeah, there'd be a couple Fridays and Saturdays I'd walk in Grandma's kitchen, and there'd be a cow head sitting in the sink. I knew it was gonna be a good weekend. Love it, man. Love it.
You cook much barbacoa yourself?
Yeah. So I've been begging the wife to dig a hole in the backyard for the last 3 or 4 years, and it hadn't happened yet. I don't cook it, but I enjoy it whenever I get the chance.
You ever been down to Valentina's?
So I was gonna hit that up this weekend. I've followed them on Instagram as well. I've got a few different spots I'm gonna hit up while I'm up here, and that was one of the joints. Their tacos, they're amazing.
They're the real. That's as good as it gets on however you want to slice it. But but on Sundays they do barbacoa.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna go there, it's probably worth going by on Sunday.
That's a real good call. I'm gonna do that because I gotta head back on. Gotta be home Sunday at noon. So, do y'all get much crawfish action up here?
Yeah. The short answer is yes, and we typically try to do one big boil ourselves every year, and again, our chef Ted just makes unbelievable crawfish. We're not doing a boil this year, just because again, going back to those smokeouts, we do that's when we would do it, is one of those smokeout Saturdays. We've been focusing on menu testing for the smokehouse and kind of running through all the different things that we're going to do for that, and so that's sort of taking precedent over some of the funner stuff. Yeah,
it makes sense. A lot of the cool joints or whatever kind of places, kind of like you have here back in Houston, it's every weekend's crawfish right now. I mean, the crawfish has exploded down there for over the last 5 or 6 years. It's crazy. So if you want a cool spot where people come hang out outside or whatever, you got to be cooking crawfish.
Yep.
So that's pretty.
And I love me some crawfish. Have you had any of that? The kind of the Vietnamese.
Yes.
Man.
So the last 2 years I've cooked in, participated in, and enjoyed Big Ass Crawfish Bash, and it's in Lamarck, Texas, at the dog track. Last year they set the world record for the most crawfish ever cooked in an 8-hour span, like 67,000 pounds of crawfish.
Oh my God.
So that was the 3rd annual. This year was the 4th annual, and it's a cook-off, but crawfish. And there's something like 80 teams there, and you can go get Vietnamese. They had some that they like spin it in like wing sauce, garlic. Had spicy, Cajun, obviously Cajun, right?
Well, they roll it in basically butter, like kind of and it's just like, man, dude, there was a place. It was actually out of Houston. It closed down out here. It's called L.A. Crawfish.
Yeah,
and so
they still have them down in Houston.
Yeah, so they had one out here, and so we went, and it was freaking good, man. It ended up closing down.
Yeah,
it's too bad. But that was my only experience with it, but it was a good one.
Yeah, they do some good crawfish down there. I have a theory of after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of folks from New Orleans came to Houston and stayed in Houston, And since then,
I think that's more than a theory, buddy.
yeah, that's a fact. But now this is my crawfish theory, right?
Okay.
Is since then the freaking crawfish has, because 15 years ago there was 3 cookouts a year that somebody did in their backyard. There was no restaurant selling it. You couldn't get it. I mean, it was like a rare thing. Somebody went and drove
To Louisiana, got a bag.
got a couple sacks and come back, and we're having crawfish bowl for a birthday or a graduation party. That was the big ones. Everybody had them for the graduation parties. And now you can't go to any restaurant, any bar, any restaurant. It's crazy down there, man. So I was curious if y'all are getting kind of the same wave up here of that kind of.
I mean, there's definitely a bunch. I mean, again,
Yeah.
I look at my Instagram feed right now. I was looking this morning, and I think there was 2 I saw this weekend. And it's funny, last weekend I got a phone call from a buddy of mine that we do a lot of eating together, my buddy Bonham. He's like, man, he goes, there's a boil going on, like, up the street. You want to meet me over there, this and that and the other. So there's definitely stuff happening over here. I don't think that it's quite on the scale of Houston. It sounds like it's blown up pretty crazy over there.
It's crazy, man. Every time I go, anytime I go to any event or somewhere, I went to Carbach Brewery a couple weekends ago, trying to do some scouting for a podcast.
Sure,
and
good guys.
I got some emails, and I'm trying to hit them up, but they had crawfish going on every Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the month of April. They're doing crawfish, and it's just like I said, everywhere you go, man. But I'm not upset about it at all. Love me some crawfish.
Don't know why you would.
So what are your favorite spots to hit up around Austin, Texas that I need to gotta check out places?
Man, I tell you this, I don't have any secrets. The places I'm going to name are sort of out there a little bit, but the man, if you like ramen, there's Ramen Tatsuya out here is just a legit ramen spot. It's fabulous. Highly recommend it. On the barbecue side of things, again, the good thing about Texas barbecue, and talk about that for a second, is there's just a lot of guys that are doing a really good job.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I feel like ever since Aaron Franklin came out and sort of elevated the brisket, if you will, there's a lot of guys that figured out what he's doing. And so, again, it's not saying there's no bad barbecue out there, but the difference between the best barbecue place in the state and the 50th best barbecue place in the state is so minuscule.
Yes.
The brisket's just freaking good, man. Yes. So all the guys you've heard of, Franklin's is awesome. La Barbecue's one of my favorite. We talked about Valentina's. It's just so good. Leroy and Lewis, they're doing really interesting stuff out of a trailer. Highly recommend those guys. Mickelwaith, just freaking delicious. Man, lots of good barbecue to be had out there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite spots to go restaurant-wise, there's a French restaurant called Justine's. It's always a place that I bring out-of-town guests to. It's just, the food I think is really good. Again, going back to our consistency conversation, it's not like you're going to go there and have like a revelation about this is the best pork chop I ever had, but it's a very good pork chop, and it tastes like that every time you go, right?
Yeah.
And the thing about that place, man, is just the environment there is awesome. It's just a very cool vibe. It just feels good being there, and that's really the business that they're in. And then the food's good. You know what I mean? Like the experience is great and the food's good.
Yeah.
So it's great.
We had that conversation last night at the on the podcast on the draft. A couple buddies of mine were talking that exact thing. And he was specifically talking about he lived in Austin for 4 years, and he goes, some of the best places up there are exactly that. He goes, it's the environment, and you're with your buddies, and you're sitting outside, or you're sitting, whatever the environment of the restaurant, plus the addition of the good food. It may not be the best food you ever had, but just the entire experience itself is what makes that lasting memory, right? So that's pretty funny. You just said that.
I think there's a restaurant group in town called McGuire Mormon.
Okay.
Those guys just know what they're doing. So they've got a bunch of different. They basically do a bunch of one-off concepts. They don't kind of double up. So they've got seafood concept called Perlas that's just unbelievable. They sold it off, but it's still really good. It's they had like a chicken au carbone concept. So where you splay the chicken out and cook it over. Called Fresas, which is just really good. They just opened up a second location. Highly recommend those guys. They've got like Vietnamese kind of French fusion place called Elizabeth Street Cafe that's just delightful. I could go on and on.
I love it. So I'm sure you have relationships with a lot of these guys. So how does that? I'm just curious. I mean, there's not like a Austin food convention. So I mean, how do you meet most of these people?
Man, it's funny you bring that up. I don't have a relationship with that many of those guys.
Okay.
I think that again, I and not good, bad, or otherwise. It just, I didn't come up in the food scene out here, and I'm not, and like I said, we're pretty focused inward on kind of what we're doing and trying to grow our business, just kind of internally. And, I think that with everything that we're doing next door, I need to make a concerted effort to kind of get out there and shake more hands and have more conversations and make more relationships, because there is a community and a scene out there that quite frankly I'm not, and Bangers isn't a part of right now. And so that's one of my for my PR company, that's one of my focuses for the year coming forward. So
yeah, that's you just up and down the street, all the restaurant,
Well, listen, I know all the bar owners on Rainey Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think throughout the city, yeah, I mean, there's so many guys that are doing such a good job, and there's so much that can be learned. So it again, is a focus of mine going forward to kind of get out there a little bit and make a few more buddies in the restaurant scene.
That's good, man. Do you hit up much other parts of the state?
We used to, before I had two kids, we would travel for food quite a bit. I've been on some really epic kind of food road trips with some of my staff, and my wife likes to eat as well. And but man, I two kids as a mother. But we're on the other side of that now. So I think that both my boys are sleeping. But basically, that just means both my boys are sleeping at the moment. And so now that happens, we can kind of focus on getting out and doing more traveling for food, because it's important. I mean, that's where inspiration comes from. And staring at your Instagram feed only gets you so far.
Yeah. Well, not even just for food, just in general. I mean, you go down to the beach in Corpus Christi or hit San Antonio for a Spurs game or something. I mean, anything, Dallas or something,
Yeah, I mean, in short, sure, but not like lately. I just haven't been doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
I mean, where have I been recently? Me and the wife, we go to San Antonio somewhat regularly in the course of the development next door. My wife's our designer, and there's a bunch of good antique shops and stuff in San Antonio, so we make it down there quite a bit. Similar to Dallas, I lived in Dallas for a couple years, so I got a bunch of buddies out there. So we'll go down there periodically. It's funny, I really have not spent much time in Houston at all, and I want to, just because, again, there's a really robust food scene that's happening out there that I really would like to get to know and be a part of. And one of the, as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I got married coming up on 2 years ago, and for our wedding gift, our registry, what we had done is we bought an old trailer that was from the 40s. It's called a Westwood Westcraft Coronado. It's just badass.
Like an Airstream
travel trailer, kind of like
an
an Airstream, and it's also an aluminum trailer. This one's painted, but it's just it's badass. And so what we did for our wedding registry was we basically made a line item budget on everything that we wanted to do to it, and then essentially people could come in and they could contribute to a given line item, and that was our registry.
What a great idea!
And it's pretty cool.
I've got some hot rods I can do that with. I'm gonna get married again.
Exactly. And so our goal with that is essentially to get out there and explore, not only Texas but the whole U.S.
Yes.
And especially with two young kids like we've got, air travel is nothing short of a nightmare. And so driving in a car is a lot easier. And so I think for the next X number of years, that's how we're going to want to explore stuff. And so I think if we sit down and probably 2 years from now, I'll be like, oh man, I've been all over this state.
Yeah. Well, definitely want to have you back on, by the way.
For sure.
This is pretty awesome. You're very open with your whole concept, everything, which I really appreciate, and you got a good story too. which is awesome, and you're very articulate, which is sometimes doing this, you get kind of scared. You get kind of scared. Like, yeah, well, we'll take a shot. We'll see. But you're very good.
Thank you.
Why Austin over California? I mean, what brought you back?
Yeah. Love. I fell in love with the city, man. Came here for college and had a really good college experience. It's funny. I like had this conversation one time about traveling. Like in college, I did study abroad, and you go around and there's the city where you got thrown out of a bar and you lost your wallet and whatever else, and then there's the city where you took a girl home from a bar and slept with her, right? And it's like, you end up loving the one and hating the other, and it's like, well, did you really hate that city, or was it just the experience that you had? And but it all comes back to the experience, and Austin has just done so much for me, and I've got so much gratitude for the city. It's my home, man. I just don't feel an attraction to Los Angeles. I think that there's good people everywhere, but the general quality of people that live here in Austin, I think is superior to the general quality of people that you find in Los Angeles. I think that, and a lot of that has to do with, when you think about Austin and you ask someone that lives in Austin, hey, how do you like living in Austin? They're like, oh, I like Austin. And and the lakes are awesome, and the this and the that, right?
Yeah.
You ask someone in LA, you're like, hey man, how do you like living in LA? They're like, I like living in LA, but the traffic sucks, but the smog, but, right? And so it's that and or but, and so what you have in Austin is basically everyone that's here wants to be here.
Yeah.
And is not only wants to be here, is excited about being here.
Yeah.
And when you go to LA, it's a city of people that are like, they're there for a specific purpose, and the purpose is not to be in LA; it's to get something from LA.
Mm-hmm.
And sense. So I think there's, that creates a vibration, if you will, and I like the vibes here better.
Yeah, folks in Austin definitely seem to be on a little higher wavelength.
Yeah.
As far as, like you said, attitude, everybody's having a good time. There's a lot going on up here. I really like it.
And they can be, there's also some laziness. Everyone's having such a good time that it's hard to get a call back sometimes, but people to show up for work. But that's a whole nother podcast.
Awesome, man. So what else we got? We're an hour deep. How long we got?
Let me see. Depends on if you want to eat pig or not.
We're gonna be sold out here pretty quick. So you open at 11. We started right at 11, and I've seen nothing but steady stream of people coming in.
It's a good thing.
That's an excellent thing on a Friday, a beautiful Friday afternoon, 65 degrees out. Come on.
Yeah, I got. I've got some time if you want to talk. Otherwise, we can go off mic and I can sort of walk you around and show you what we're up to and maybe get some material for the next podcast.
You got it, man. Sorry, folks, but I don't have to be selfish. Ben, this has been really awesome.
I've enjoyed it as well.
I appreciate you coming on. You got a great story. Everything you got going here, I love. Please keep up the Instagram stories. It makes my day. Every time you come across y'all's little story, I'm like, yes, let's see what we got going. So tell me about the golf videos. That's so freaking funny, man.
Thank you, man. So there's a so if you sometime Google Winnebago man.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of these outtakes of this guy that was like a spokesman for Winnebago travel trailers, and he just used to get like anytime he'd screw up, he would just kind of spin out and so we've had two video guys here, and so I actually run our social media side of our business, and I don't shoot the videos. And so we had this guy Derek, and we got this guy Marcelo now. And so Derek, we're trying to wrap on what we want to do for the golf videos, and so he shows us this video. We're like, oh man, this is perfect, and we'll kind of take that and adapt it to golf. And so Brian, our general manager, fancies himself an actor, and he's also a really good golfer. And so we just kind of combine those things, and that's what happened.
Yeah, so y'all need to go check out the videos, but I'll give you all the little gist. Is he's sitting out there doing a promotional video for y'all's golf tournament, right?
Yep.
And he's saying, come on out, this and that, and he's being all professional and stuff. And then he's like, hey, throw me a club, and the guy in the background like just tosses a club at him, and he starts he just gets all upset and starts cussing. I don't remember if he cusses or not, but I think they beep it out.
There's a lot of beeping.
Yeah, beeping it out, cussing, and oh man, that's funny. I laughed my ass off. I was like, that's good shit, man. So yeah, I'm gonna get out here. I'm gonna take you up on kind of getting the grand tour, and like I said, really appreciate you coming on, man. Tell everybody your Instagram page and where they
Yeah,
can
for
follow
sure.
us.
So you can find out more about us. Our website is bangersaustin.com. Our Instagram handle is at bangersaustin. Same thing with Twitter and Facebook is all at bangersaustin.
And come find them in beautiful downtown Austin.
Yep.
Rainey Street.
79 and 81 and soon to be 81 and a half.
81 and a half Rainey Street.
It's a big red compound. You can't miss it.
Love it. Awesome, man. Thank you much.
Yep.